All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting, June 21st, 2022. Thanks for joining us. If anyone would like to speak on an item, please fill out a request to be heard form and give it to a staff member. With that, I'll call the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is minutes from the April 26th trust meeting. Do we have a motion on the minutes? Do we have a motion and a second? Please cast your votes.
Is my mic on? There were 2 changes, revisions that needed to be made with the minutes. Do I say those now?
You can.
Okay. It said that Campos was absent and she was here. And then on one vote it said I was absent, but I abstained. And with those revisions, I would.
Yeah, we just use absent for
Oh,
abstaining.
okay.
So.
But yeah, it says she was absent, so I was just gonna. And with that, with those revisions, I would go yeah.
Who has not voted? Mariana?
Do you wish to vote now?
All right, the item passes. Brings us to item 3 on the agenda, ratification of claims. Do we have a motion on claims? Motion and a second, please cast your votes. Item passes, thank you. Brings us to item 4 on the agenda, items for individual consideration. We'll start with 4A, amendment number 1 to contract for architectural services with ADG PC, project MB 1540, the Myriad Gardens Crystal Bridge renovation. And I believe Mr. Winger is going to talk about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Winger, Public Works Director for Oklahoma City. Your item number 4 is an amendment number 1 to the contract for architectural services to ADG regarding the Crystal Bridge project. This project is actually in construction right now. It began in the summer of 2021. It's on schedule to be completed later this year in 2022. The amendment actually addresses some electrical and mechanical design modifications that were identified during the construction process. And so this is a $6,000 amendment to the architectural contract to have the architect take into account those additional changes. You might remember this is a cooperative project. Part of the project's being constructed publicly, part of it's being constructed privately. So with that coordination effort, this will help make sure that we're fully coordinated on those extra items. Can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Winger? Thank you, sir. If we have no other questions, I will take a motion. Moved and seconded. Please cast your votes. And the item passes. Brings us to item B, amendment number 2 to the Midtown HCL LLC Economic Development Agreement to clarify the conditions developer must meet to allow for termination of covenants on the subject property. Joanna.
Good afternoon. Joanna McSpadden, Finance Department. So this economic development agreement was originally approved back in 2009, and it included 12 individual parcels, and we added a minimum tax payment to each of those 12 parcels, with the cap expected to be just about $1.3 million. Well, they've met and exceeded that cap, and so we would like to remove the minimum tax covenants on all of 12 parcels for administrative purposes and just for ease of administration of that contract. So that's what this amendment does.
Any questions for Joanna? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4C on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the transfer of $418,242.51 received by the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust from the State of Oklahoma's Native American Cultural and Educational Authority. Joanna's already up there to explain it again.
I just decided to stay up here.
Okay, good.
So we had an agreement with NACIA back in November of 2021 to receive this $400,000. This is specifically for pre-opening costs at the FAM. This MOU allows us to then transfer that to the FAM to reimbursement them for those costs.
Any questions for Joanna on this item? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4D on the agenda. This is Economic Development Agreement with O'Connor, MDE LLC for assistance and development financing in support of the O'Connor Resort and Indoor Water Park project located adjacent to the First Americans Museum. Joanna,
Yes.
who's here again, will explain the
Okay.
item for us.
So, if you all will recall, Chad Claiborne gave us a presentation on this a couple of weeks ago. So this is the $342 million project. We have allocated $102.2 million to the project, and I'll remind you kind of the structure of that deal. So it's a pay-in, pay-out concept with no upfront funding. We're doing 100% of the actual ad valorem taxes paid annually, which would be paid out at an estimated $67.5 million. And then we have 90% of the 2% general fund portion of sales tax, up to a maximum of a little over $2 million per year, total maximum $34.7 million. So that's kind of how that is structured. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Joanna on this? It's going to be a super exciting project. I can't wait to see this thing get started on. It's going to be fantastic. With that, I'll take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Well, how do you wish to vote?
Yay.
All right, the item passes. Brings us to item E on the agenda, the resolution approving the American Indian Cultural Center Foundation's proposed fiscal year budget, the total amount of $4 million, to be provided by the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, the Future Operations Escrow Disbursement Account, and other sources as recommended by the Indian Culture Center Museum Finance Funding Committee.
So the $4 million budget this year is funded at $2 million from the escrow account, which is the $14 million received from the Chickasaws, $1 million from the city's general fund, and then $1 million from other governmental funds. We're looking at potentially ARPA or other government funds that will secure for that last $1 million.
Thank you. Any questions for Joanna? Quiet crowd today. All right, with that, I'll take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4F, joint resolution of the City of Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, and the Myriad Gardens Foundation, setting and establishing the annual management fee and annual public support for facility maintenance, total amount of $2,625,890 for the operation, management, and maintenance of the Myriad Botanical Gardens for 2022 and 2023 fiscal year.
This year's budget for the Myriad Gardens, $2.6 million. $2.4 million of that is their management fee, and just under $200,000 is capital projects.
Any questions for Joanna on this item? If not, we can take a motion. Motion and a second. Please vote. The item passes. Brings us to item G, joint resolution of the City of Oklahoma City and the Scissortail Park Foundation setting and establishing the annual management fee and capital fund support in the amount of $5,476,800 for the operation and management of Scissortail Park. Joanna?
Yeah, so Scissortail Park's budget this year is comprised of $5.4 million for the management fee and $77,000 for capital projects. Since it's a newer park, there's not as much capital needed yet, so.
So is part of this for the south portion of the park?
Some portion of it is, yes.
Okay.
So there's a plan to have that operational, and they're getting it ready.
And we still expect that to open
I
September?
sure wish Eric was
Is that
still
right?
here. I can find out, and I'll let you know.
That's fine. All right, any other questions for Joanna?
Okay.
Well, then we can take a motion. Motion and a second, please vote.
Trustee
Waiting
Stone.
on Stone Cipher there. And the item passes. Brings us to item H. This is a joint resolution with the City of Oklahoma City and the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City, setting and establishing the annual management fee and total public support for management and administration of economic development activities and programs by the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City. Joanna?
Yeah, so the $682,000 contract is comprised of $517,000 paid from the TIF and GOLT funds. Those are base services. Then we have $50,000 paid from MAPS 4 use tax, also for base services. And then $115,000 would be paid from the general fund, and those are for additional services as needed.
Thank you. Any questions for Joanna on this item?
I just wanted to make a comment. I've been really impressed. I was able to catch up with Keith on behalf of the Alliance, and hearing the strong pipeline for that, specifically the CPACE program. I was really impressed by that. Matter of fact, one of the projects that we just approved, Okana, it was in their capital stack. That's just one of the tools that you all are leveraging, and I was just impressed how that's come together and really got off the floor. So great work to you all and to you as well.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll take a motion. I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Next up, item 4I, the professional services agreement with Oklahoma City Economic Development Foundation. Joanna.
This is our annual contract with the chamber. So for their contract, the $2 million, just over $1 million is base services that are paid from the general fund. So that's a transfer that the trust receives from the general fund. We have $90,000 in paid directly from GOLT, $2,500 per SIP application. So you'll hear a new SIP application, and each time the chamber brings one of those, we pay them $2,500. We budget $25,000, so $10,000 per year is kind of the estimate. And then they also have $100,000 for additional services if needed, paid from the general fund as well. And Jeff is here, and he wanted to make a couple comments.
I just wanted to say thank you again. I mean, I think this is always it's a good example of a team sport from an economic development perspective. We had the chance yesterday to be in front of another client, and I think really this unified approach where the city, chamber, the alliance, and our public and private partners really walk hand in hand to present a unified front is very unique. I think we see that when we look at other cities and the way cities ask us questions about how we get work done. But from a contract perspective, just want to say thank you for the continued partnership on an annual basis. It means a lot, and it's also, I think, a way for us to continue to lean in to inclusive and economic development. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I'm chatty.
Go ahead.
I was really impressed by the performance measures that you all included, because I think that with contracts, especially when we're talking about using public funds, that's important as a way of accountability, looking at, hey, these are the things that we'll be reporting on an annual basis. So I just wanted to say thank you for including that. There were some things that haven't been involved in behind the scenes that I know that areas that you all are strengthening when it comes to economic development in an equitable, inclusive way. But I just thank you all for including that in the packet. So great work.
Thank you very much.
All right, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item J on the agenda, fiscal year 2022-2023 Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust budget. Joanna.
Yes. I'm going to present our $149 million budget. So our first slide is an overview, and it gives you a breakdown kind of by fund. You'll see the largest there is gold. That's due to a pretty hefty fund balance in that fund that we keep. Then we've got the TIFs that make up well over half of the budget together, and then General Economic Development Fund down there at the bottom. That's where we fund all of the annual contracts, many of which we're approving today. Next, I've got a breakdown by revenue. So these are the revenue types that we've got included in our budget this year. You can see that the largest is fund balance. Ad valorem makes up about 21%, and then some smaller revenue categories there. And then our expense budget breaks down as you see here. Again, reserve for future projects is the largest. If you net out fund balance and reserve for future projects, you'd find that we're adding about $2 million to fund balance this year. So that's kind of the structure of that budget. You've got a packet, the full budget in your packet. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any. We can go through that a little bit more in depth if you'd like.
Any comments, questions? If not, we can take a motion. I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that item passes as well. Brings us to item K on the agenda. This is a joint resolution of the City of Oklahoma City approving the allocation of general obligation limited tax proceeds and/or investment proceeds in an amount of $500,000 provide for certain job creation economic development incentives with Wilder Systems Incorporated. Joanna will introduce our presenter.
Well, I'm actually going to let Kim from the chamber introduce our presenter, so
Okay.
I'm going to step aside and let her do that.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Kim Wilmus with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. On behalf of the Chamber, we are supportive of Wilder Systems to receive the SIP funds to secure their location here in Oklahoma City. They are considering Oklahoma City to manufacture and design robots to support aircraft manufacturing as well as maintenance. We've been working with them since April of 2002, and I am happy to introduce Erica Pox. She's the Director of Operations for Wilder Systems.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Erica. I'm Director of Operations at Wilder Systems. I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, why we're thinking about Oklahoma City, and what we intend to do here. Wilder Systems is an industrial services company that provides robots as a service, primarily for aircraft manufacturing and maintenance tasks. So what we're trying to do is aircraft tasks that are typically done by large, really expensive machinery or by humans. We are trying to make that more agile and increase quality of production, increase safety of the workers, and increase the speed at which it's done. We launched in 2018. We are located in Austin, Texas. We've got 16 employees, and we did about $3 million in revenue last year. And we are hoping to expand operations, hopefully to Oklahoma City. So I'll show you a little bit of what we've done so far. We've got a few projects. One is in Hill Air Force Base, defastening. This is our Agile manufacturing robot on the right here. This is what we use. The end effector is actually what provides these different capabilities for aircraft manufacturing and maintenance tasks. So we've got one that defastens the A-10 Warthog at Hill Air Force Base. We're working on defastening the B-1 bomber H-tabs here at Tinker. We've done a drive-through car wash for F-16s, basically, with our robots down at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And then that's on the military side, and we want to do both military. We're focused on both military and commercial. So our commercial projects right now are both in Florida, one at Crestview, Florida, drilling Chinook helicopters, and then in progress, we'll soon be starting up drilling G650s for Piper aircraft in Vero Beach, Florida. And so these orange dots represent all the different aircraft manufacturers across the United States that we're hoping to serve soon, or that we will be serving soon. Why OKC? We see Oklahoma City as the epicenter of aircraft manufacturing. This represents, I'm sure you guys know this, we're within 2, 4, and 6 hours of a ton of the different Air Force bases that we'll be servicing soon, as well as all those orange dots you just saw on the previous map. We want to be able to more quickly and better serve our customer at Tinker Air Force Base. They are pretty much our marquee client right now. Coming here would mean we would cut costs for a ton of shipping costs, because these are large equipments. They're about the size of a Tahoe. They fit into a Connex, but they are expensive to ship. So moving here, I think, would create better proximity to all of our customers. And then, alongside less expensive real estate and the labor force is something we would move here for too. We would, the incentive programs that we're considering definitely are incentivizing us to move here as well. We've considered other sites such as Seattle, where there's a ton of aircraft manufacturing, Ogden, Utah, where I said, our other customer is, and that also has great proximity to a lot of these customers, and then Atlanta, Georgia, where there's a lot of aerospace activity as well. Coming here this year, we're targeting just to do about 5 to 7 new jobs by the end of 2022, but really 150 new jobs over the next 4 to 5 years. Everything from technicians that don't require a degree to senior engineers that have 5 to 7 years experience engineering and a full engineering degree. We want to participate in jobs programs, hiring veterans. We do that now. We've got a pretty diverse workforce. We do provide health benefits and 401k benefits up to 50% of their premiums. So we're hoping to do that in Oklahoma City and bring more jobs here. Happy to answer any questions.
Can you briefly describe what the defastening process is?
Sure, yeah. So with, 90% of the cost of an F-35, for example, is actually in the maintenance, not in the acquisition of it. So unlike cars that break and you just trash them, airplanes, they actually do a ton of defastening, so drilling out the holes in order to inspect the aircraft skins. That's a non-destructive inspection. And currently these are all done by hand. So it's really tedious. It's not a fun job. It's taking maintainers away from other more dynamic human thinking jobs. And I also want to mention that we're not taking away jobs. We're really augmenting the current labor force and filling jobs that aren't being filled right now. So defastening means they're taking the aircraft skins off of the aircraft, inspecting them for damage or corrosion, and then putting them back on. And so that's a lot of the activity that's happening at Tinker.
Excellent.
I have a quick question. When you said you are going to be looking to recruit veterans and some of those things, are you also looking to work with potentially with career techs and also recruiting in that sense, or any other efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of what we do in Austin right now. They've got a great robotics program in Austin, and I know there's several around here as well. I would say that's about 60% of the labor force that we'd be looking to hire here. Really bring our manufacturing and do kind of the R&D, more heavy engineering in Austin, but then do a lot of the actual, nuts and bolts of making these robots come to life here, which would be great for the career techs in those schools.
Right. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Erica, will you be moving here, or
Hey,
it's
you never
better than
know.
Austin?
We'll see. Austin's a great place, but this is my first time here, and Kim's going to show me around after this, and I can't wait.
Don't judge it by the temperature.
It's hotter in Austin. This is great.
Any other questions? All right, if not, I believe we can go ahead and take a motion. All right, please cast your votes. And the item passes. Congratulations and welcome to Oklahoma City. I hope you have a good visit. All right, this brings us to item L, subordination and standstill agreement between the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust PW Phase 3 Development LLC, and MidCap Financial Trust for the Page Woodson Phase 3 Affordable Housing Project. And Amy Douglas is going to explain this item for us.
Thank you. I thought that a subordination agreement would be pretty common, but I am hearing that it is not, and that's probably why Joanna asked me to present this instead of her doing it. But let me give you some background on this. About a year ago, the trust entered into a development agreement with a developer for the Page Woodson Affordable Housing Project. It's structured as a $950,000 forgivable loan, and repayment is based on the developer meeting certain annual conditions. If they meet those, they only pay interest. If they don't, they pay interest plus principal. Now, included in the economic development agreement and the loan documents and the mortgage was our agreement to the developer that our loan to them would be subordinate to whatever senior loan they have. And additionally, if they decided to refinance, we would still be subordinate to that loan. They are wanting to refinance. It's about $12 million, I believe, and the total project is worth around $16 million. What MidCap is going to be the new financer. What they're asking, I'm surprised that more financial companies don't ask us for, but they're wanting us to actually contract with them and say, yes, we are agreeing that our loan is subordinate to you, both in terms of payment, both in terms of filing mortgage, all of that. So that is basically what this agreement does. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions about it.
So is the standstill component, is that something that, as far as if litigation were to occur, or is that?
Yeah, well, basically, it could take a couple of different forms. As long as they're getting paid, if we weren't, we have no recourse at that point without their permission. We have to stand still. Yeah, okay. Exactly. There was some back and forth between my office. I did try to negotiate some changes. They were receptive to some. I would say at first they said that we could only get paid up to $10,000 annually, and I said, well, no, that doesn't work if the developer doesn't meet these. So they were willing to make some compromises. Other things they were not, such as that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Thank you, Amy. Brings us to agenda item M, the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City Fiscal Year Third Quarter Report. Kenny will give us an update.
All right, happy to do so. So Kenton Soodle, the new president at the Alliance, and so I do want to point out, since we didn't have a meeting in May, this covers through March 31st, of which I came on board at the Alliance March 25th, but I'm going to try to cover all this.
Okay.
So. But I will give a couple just quick updates on some things. So one of the items on here is the ARPA funding, and if you recall, the Alliance was contracted, the city contracted with us to provide the small business assistance programs. And just to give you an update, your report talks about it getting ready to go out. We actually, it's been out for a while. We've actually received, I'm happy to say, over 700 applications, which represents about 400 applicants. There are really three programs we rolled out here initially: the technical assistance programs, the facade improvement program, and then what we call kind of the COVID mitigation program, which is like if you had to do some small capital improvements. And so businesses and nonprofits are allowed to apply for all three of those programs. So that's why we have more total applications than actual applicants. So that represents about 400 plus applicants, but 700 plus applications. About 80% of those have been moved on, to where past the initial phase, and so they're going back and forth getting information. I will say that we've put some information out publicly, changing our message a little bit to say, We may have exceeded at this point the funding that we have allocated to that program, but we're still taking applications in case, because there are multiple programs contemplated by the city, and we may be able to allocate additional funds there if the demand requires that. So it's going very, very well. Over 70% of those were from businesses that identified as being minority owned. So I think we've done a really good job working with community partners. We partnered with the Asian Cultural District Association, the Black Chamber, the Community Action Agency, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Capitol Hill Calle del Cinco, the Latino Community Development Agency, Northeast OKC Renaissance, and Progress OKC to help us do our public outreach there. So that's going very well. On job creation and OIA, I wanted to talk about very quickly two things there. Just the continued, this has some information about the expansion of Tinker and the closing of Douglas. Subsequent to this time frame in this report, the Board of County Commissioners has approved that as well. So I believe the next step is it goes to district court. The other thing, I think Ariana mentioned the 577 property and some of those things. Just we're continuing to just have so much activity, so many requests and folks that are potentially interested in that. And, with our partnership with the Chamber, we've done some site visits already on that, but I just want to, reiterate with the trust of how strategic of a move that was to try to acquire those things. And those are things that we're kind of, learning from this experience and looking forward to where else might we look in this area, because there's just so much demand for that. On Northeast OKC redevelopment, revitalization, we finished up the south of 8th public engagement process. So they're currently putting that report together, which, if you will recall, that was a process to get input from the community to help us and help OKIRA specifically as to kind of guide and help how we may change our RFP process for some of those properties that we own, mainly between 8th and 4th Street. Also want to say just the continued single-family home development in OKIRA properties is going very well. My first 2 meetings over there, we've had 19 and 15 single-family dwelling units that have been approved for construction. It's really, really picking up, and I think the market has something to do with that. But I think a lot of the efforts of things that are going on the northeast side of town, just there's a lot of interest in folks moving and building there. I'm happy to report that. Progress OKC, just very quickly, there's an item on here that mentioned the last bullet about that we partnered with a consortium of different folks to try to put in for the operation of the H.B. Foster Center. I'm happy to report that consortium was selected, so we're working on the agreements between all those partners and Progress, and that's something that will be coming. We're happy to be a partner on that. And then, as you see there, I came on board on March 25th, so I'm happy to be here, and if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
I just have a quick comment on here. One, welcome. And also, I appreciate the work that's being done as far as the Oklahoma City Rescue Program. The partnership with these organizations, I've definitely seen a lot of movement and a lot of awareness from the historic Capitol Hill District, the LCDA, getting it to people. And I think trust is a big part in the community when it comes to these programs. And so they're definitely doing their part to get it out. I've also had conversations with Progress OKC and a couple others on here. And so I definitely think that the steps that are being taken to get the word out and get people the resources that they need is very beneficial. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Take a motion to receive. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that item passes as well. Brings us to item 5 on the agenda, which is General Manager Reports.
Yeah, so just point out, you have those in the packet. I don't have a lot to add, but there are 2 sets in there since we didn't have a trust meeting. So we've got April and May's in there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's any questions.
Any questions? Do we have any comments from staff? Joanna, did you need to add anything? No? You're good? Any comments or questions from trustees? Yes, ma'am.
we should name the June meeting the Joanna meeting?
I think so.
Okay.
I actually do have
Yeah,
a comment.
I
I
knew
thought
it.
you were still talking about the general manager's report. So I have a really, really sad comment to make that I think this is Lacey Kelly's last meeting with us. She has started law school.
Wow.
And we are going to let her go do that full-time in August. She's going to stick with me for a little while doing part-time, but I think this will be her last meeting. I am planning an extremely wonderful party of some sort, which you will all be invited to, I will be sure, in the next few weeks, but I want to tell her thank you for your service.
Congratulations. That's fantastic news. Glad to hear it. Did we have any citizens sign up to speak? No. If not, then that moves us to item 7. We are adjourned. So.